So,
Yes.
all right, thank you. So we're going to start with Automation Studio. Automation Studio. This is an application inside of Marketing Cloud that lets you build automations. So, in general, Marketing Cloud as a platform is predominantly known as a marketing automation platform, meaning it can solve different problems. It can do more than just send emails or text messages or communication pieces. You can do more than just that. So you can automate the process of doing all this communication. So you can automate the process of bringing in data into Marketing Cloud, grouping people in a data extension into segments, sending a message, an email, a text, sending a message to people, and pulling the results. You can automate each of those pieces. All right. That's one of several things you could do inside of Automation Studio. So here's what we're going to talk about when it comes to Automation Studio. What it means to automate, identifying an organization's automation needs, knowing where Automation Studio is inside of the platform, and how to configure some typically used automations, right? So in general, these are the reasons why organizations automate or why people automate. Typically, it's to save time, right? Save time, get things done better, faster, easier, so that you can spend your actual time on more value add items. So another reason would be to synchronize data between different systems without having to manually do it, right? Another reason could be, now this third one is a key one. This is why a lot of organizations purchase a marketing automation platform such as Marketing Cloud. They want to be able to send the right message at the right time to the right people. And that is doable using a platform like Marketing Cloud. And by the way, Marketing Cloud is not the only product when it comes to this category, this marketing automation product category. Just like the Salesforce CRM is not the only product in the CRM product category. There are competitive products out there. Adobe has a marketing automation platform. IBM, I think IBM's platform is called Unica. There's a raft of competing products out there, but Marketing Cloud, when it comes to the marketing automation product category, is the market leader. Microsoft has a CRM, not really a marketing automation platform. So these are some of the things, or these are some of the reasons why organizations will want a platform that they can use to automate some things. All right. So let's go to the next slide. So this is what Automation Studio looks like inside of Marketing Cloud. So there are a bunch of elements or features inside of Automation Studio, but they're referred to as activities, okay? So rather than showing you a screenshot, how about I go show you the real deal? So from the home page, once you're logged in, if you hover on the Journey Builder tab, you can see Automation Studio, right? So here is Automation Studio. And I have a few slides that explain what these different sections mean, but since we're here, I might as well give you a tour of Automation Studio. So once you arrive here, This is the overview page. Right here on the left, the top left corner, there's a search bar, and you can search for any existing automations that have been created. So just like you've seen with data extensions and emails, there's also a folder structure right here. So you can create folders and save your automations inside of folders. And just like I did with the data extensions and the emails in Content Builder, I'm going to rearrange all of this into cohort 5, cohort 6, just for cleanliness. All right. And folks, when the time comes, you can create your subfolder under the cohort 6 folder, which I'm going to create here. But since we're talking about folders, this is how you create one. It's the same process as you'd go through in Email Studio to create a folder for data extensions. So let's call this the cohort 5. And if we scroll, there it is, cohort 5. Now let's create a cohort 6 folder. To move stuff, it's the same process. Let's say I wanted to move this folder into the cohort 5 folder. Simply select it, click on move, select where I want to move it to, and click on move. And now that self-study folder is underneath the cohort 5 folder. So I'll do that for all the rest here. But moving on, in the middle of the screen, you see a list view of all automations. Typically, this shows you all automations. So if you click on the all automations text here in the top left, it shows you all the automations inside of the account. So it looks like there are 53 automations. And it shows you all automations in different statuses. So for example, right here, this one is currently running. So this is an automation that's running at the moment, as you see here. Whereas the one beneath has completed, and you see what time it was completed. And then you can scroll through to see even more, or you can, you guys know how to handle list views and such. You can choose what you want to see, or you can choose to see everything. Okay. And then if we move to the right column, you get a summary which you can break down by day or week, right? So, and then you can also get a quick status update on all specific automations. For example, if I wanted to see all automations that are currently in progress, it shows me that right here. This automation is currently in progress. If I want to see all automations that errored out today or yesterday, I can get a quick view of that. If I want to see for a date range, say all automations that have had an error in the last I want September 1st. Let's go this September 1st to September 30th. Hey, what's that about? Oh, I think you can only get the view for a week, not for a month. So if I say September 24th to 30th, yeah. None have errored in that date range. So if I choose another date range, nothing. Okay. So if we say we want all automations that were completed in that date range, see, it gives me all automations that were completed in that time period. So from the whole page, you can run quick reports on different automation types or different automation statuses, right? So if you wanted to create a new automation, you click on New Automation in the top right corner. Okay. First question was from Risikat, and Robert has gracefully answered the question. Thank you, Robert. So, if we were going to create a new automation, we simply click on the automation. But as a best practice, as I've mentioned, when you're creating any content for yourself, it's best to create a folder for yourself. And I am going to do that. I am going to eat my own dog food by leading by example. So I'm going to create a 2023 folder. Where's my folder? There it is, right at the top. And I go into my folder, and any new automations I create will automatically be saved inside of my folder. So same thing applies for data extensions, for creating email messages in Content Builder. Same process applies here too. So it's a good practice to always save your stuff in folders, just so it's easy to find and your account is generally clean. So this is the canvas you get when you create a new automation. So I'm going to walk you through everything on the screen, left to right, top to bottom. All right, let's just make sure we're following our slides. So this is where we are. Let's make sure I don't miss anything. Okay, let's go back to Marketing Line. So typical starting point is to give your automation a name. So let's call this sample automation October 2020. And then you say done and go save. So one thing to keep in mind, unlike in Content Builder, where you build emails and as you're going through the build process, the system is automatically saving your work. In Automation Studio, the system is not automatically saving your work. All right, so you have to remember to always click on save as you go. Do not make the assumption that it's auto saving. You might end up losing your work if you don't save manually. So let's start from the top left, right here. There are 3 starting sources for an automation. So every automation inside of Marketing Cloud typically has 3 components: the starting source, the activities, and then whatever the outcome you're expecting. Okay, so component number 1 is our starting sources. So the first source we'll talk about is your schedule. And for these components, to use any of them, you have to drag and drop them here. So for the starting sources, you have to drag one of these 3 and drop it here in the circle. So for example, if I wanted to use the schedule starting source, I drop it here, and then I configure the schedule that I want it to run based on. So let's say, for example, because this will help crystallize things for you. Let's say, for example, I wanted to create an automation that will check a data extension for specific email addresses and then send those email addresses an email. And I wanted this automation to run every day at 6 a.m. My starting source will be a schedule. So I'll grab my schedule. I will configure when I want this to start. So let's say I wanted this automation to start tomorrow at 6 a.m. I'll select tomorrow's date. I'll select the time, start time. And you're not limited to just the start time in this drop down, in this pick list. you can enter a specific time that you want. Let's say I want it to start at 6:07 a.m. I can just type it in there. You're not limited to what's in the pick list. And then you have to select the time zone. So I am in Eastern time. I will go with Eastern time. Where is it? Close. I see Pacific. I see Central. Where is Eastern? I probably scrolled past it. Let's go slowly. There it is. US, Canada, Eastern time. Okay, so I selected my date, my start time. And now, how often do I want this to run? I want it to run every day. Yes, I want it to run daily, every 1 day, and I want it to end on a specific date. Let's say I want it to end on a date in 2050. How about that? Imagine what your life will be like in 2050. So let's say that's when I want it to end. Yeah? You know what? Let's do something more realistic. I'm going to run an automation for 27 years. Let's say I want it to end in December. All right? Let's just pick a date in December. Okay? I want it to end of this year. All right? So it's going to run starting tomorrow at this time, Eastern time zone. It's going to run, this is going to be the frequency. It's going to run once a day. And we're not limited to just this frequency. We can choose how often we want it to run. It can be daily, hourly, weekly, yearly, whatever it is. All right. But just for illustration purposes, I want it to run daily. And I want it to end at the end of this year. That's my schedule right there. So I'll save that. And here I get a summary of what my schedule is. All right. So that's component number one. You always need to have a starting source for your automation. And that's how you schedule, that's how you create a schedule for an automation. So right now, you'll notice the status is paused and I am unable to click on the active button. Can anyone tell us why this is the case? Why is this grayed out? Why am I unable to select active? Can anyone guess? Any takers? You could put your responses in the chat or you could raise your hand and I will unmute you. So Doyen's answer is because it starts tomorrow? No, that's not the reason. Anyone else? It's okay if you get the answer wrong. We're in the process of learning why. And I want you guys to be inquisitive, to ask questions and answer questions, and that's where the learning happens. All right, more answers coming in. Okay. You know, I should have put a caveat in my question. No experienced folks should answer this question. I only want the newcomers. Okay, so Robert's saying nothing in the right side. Beatrice, no activity. No action to trigger. I mean, yeah, it's added activity. Okay, so the data extension is not connected to the schedule. In some ways, these answers are correct. So yes, see this part of the canvas, there's no activity yet. So we've told the system we built an automation, yes, and we've given the system a schedule for it to run this automation based off. But we've not told it what to do. We've just told it, okay, you're going to be running every day at this time. You're going to end on the last day of December, but we've not told it what it needs to do. So there's no activity here. So that's why we can't turn it on. You can't ask it to run on a repeated basis with nothing to do. So that's correct. We need to give it a task to do. And we'll have to drag one of these activities here to this canvas. Okay, thank you for your responses. So we'll come to the activities in a bit, but let's finish with the starting sources, all right? And I'll also come back to the example I gave of, I want the system to check a data extension for specific emails, find those emails, and then send for specific email addresses, find people who meet that requirement, and then send them a message. We'll come back to that example. But let's go through with the other starting sources. So typically, in your typical organization or enterprise that uses Marketing Cloud, a large majority of the automations that will be created will be using these first two starting sources, the file drop or the schedule. All right, so let's get rid of the schedule because you can't have more than one starting source. All right, so for example, if I try to drag this here, it's not going to go. So you can only have one starting source. So let me talk about the file drop starting source. This one, I'll have to do a demonstration for it to really sink in. So that demonstration I might have to do tomorrow. All right, but let's talk about it for a bit. So the file drop starting source, the way this works is equally simple, but just requires a few prerequisites. So the file drop typically requires you to connect to the FTP. So an FTP is a secure file storage location in the cloud where you can grab files from, so where you can import files from or export files to. Okay, that's what the FTP is. Every Marketing Cloud account comes with an FTP. All right, so here's a use case for you. Let's say, and I'll go with RBC, Royal Bank of Canada. In their Marketing Cloud account, they want to build an automation. But the data they want, let's say they want to send an email on a reoccurring basis using Automation Studio. The data they need to send that email sits in a third-party system. Let's say it sits in one of those legacy banking systems at the bank, but they need to get that data into Marketing Cloud. All right. One way we can get that data into Marketing Cloud from this old legacy system is they export it as a CSV file. So an Excel file saved as CSV. They put it on the FTP folder, and then we'll have Marketing Cloud listening for the arrival of that file using this automation and using the file drop starting source. That's why it's called a file drop. So as soon as somebody at RBC, let's say someone in their data analytics team, drops the file in the FTP, Marketing Cloud is going to automatically pick it up from the FTP and bring it into a data extension. All right, so that's a use case for the file drop starting source. So with the file drop, the difference between the schedule and the file drop is the file drop is listening at every point for the arrival of a file. And at whatever time that file arrives, the system will pick it up. So the system here being Marketing Cloud, it'll pick up that file and go through with the rest of the activities in this automation. But that's the starting step. A file has to arrive on the FTP, and then the automation will run. It'll start with this, and then to run any other activities towards the right. Okay, so let's try and illustrate this for you. Let's say, using that example, RBC wants to send an email message to a couple of people on a recurring basis. So let's go grab send message. Let's grab, not that, import. So let's say this was our automation, just to keep it simple. So, and this is using the file drop starting source. Let's say there's a system within RBC that will automatically grab 100,000 people from that legacy system and automatically pull that CSV file and drop it onto the Marketing Cloud FTP file location. As soon as that file drops, let's say that file arrives at 3:30 a.m. As soon as it drops, because of this starting source, Marketing Cloud is already listening for the arrival of that file. So as soon as it drops at 3:30 a.m., Marketing Cloud will pick it up. That's step one, or that's step 0. And then it will import that file using this activity. And then once step 1 is done, it'll move on to step 2 and send everybody in that CSV file that's been imported into the data extension. It will send all those people an email message. And then the automation will end, and we'll go back to step 0, where it's listening again for the next arrival of a specific file. So that's something I'm going to have to demonstrate to you. We're not just going to talk about it, we're also going to do it. All right? So that's a use case for a file drop starting source. Okay? So we could use this, or we could use this. The schedule you already know. You could just configure exactly when you want it to start, when you want it to end. That's what you could do with the schedule. Whereas with the file drop, you don't know when the file is going to arrive. But whenever it does, it's going to get picked up. All right? Okay, let's go to our first audio question of the day. Risikat, please unmute yourself and go ahead. And by the way, folks, as you're asking questions, just a little bit of an introduction. Where you work or what industry you work in will be helpful, just so I know who I'm speaking to. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, hi, my name is Risikat. So I work in the non-profit sector. I would say, yeah, and I'm not currently using Salesforce, so I don't know much, but I use another, software that does similar, things to Salesforce. Yeah, so I'm learning this fresh, yeah. So no prior experience, yeah. So my question is, maybe I'm jumping the gun, but I wanted to ask, when you said it's going to recognize the file, I mean for the file drop, so is there a unique name given to the file, so that if multiple files are dropped into the location, to the FTP, how does it recognize which one would trigger, the flow, or is it the automation? Yeah.
Correct. Yes, fair question. So this is where we specify, this is where we tell the system what exactly the file name is it should be looking out for. So we can either tell it, okay, we want you to be looking out for a file that starts with today's date _ RBC customer data _ email message, or whatever the file name pattern is. if you don't have a specific name pattern to be looking for, you can just select by default the no file name pattern, and you just need to tell it what folder it should be listening for. So let's say, for example, RBC is going to drop this file. The name, there's no standard name for this CSV file they're going to be providing. Yes? So, but we've told them, okay, you don't have the standard name, the name can vary. What you should do in that case is make sure you're always dropping that file in the EHI folder. Don't drop it anywhere else. Just drop it in the EHI folder. And we, on the Marketing Cloud side, will tell Marketing Cloud, using this file drop starting source activity, to be listening for the arrival of a file in this folder. All right? That's how you can specify what you want it to be listening for. So even inside of the folder, if they're going to be dropping multiple files, you can then use your naming convention. So we can say the file name contains customer data. All right. As long as that file name contains customer data, pull it in. If it doesn't contain this phrase, do not pull it in. This is how you can instruct the system on what exactly it needs to be looking for. So you can use contains, you can use begins with, you can use ends with, but this is where you configure the file drop setup.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
All right. Robert.
With the FTP import to that folder, how many people have access to import to that folder? Is that something that it's limited to, or we can give that to any user?
So when it comes to access to the FTP inside of a Marketing Cloud account, you don't automatically get access. So your administrator, just like in your CRM, your administrator gives you access to specific things. Same thing inside of Marketing Cloud. The FTP access has to be set up for each individual who needs access to it. So if we were going to give, let's say we were going to give Risikat access to the Marketing Cloud FTP for this account, what we'll need to do is come to setup. I created a new tab just to show you. We'll come to setup, we'll go to data management, and then we go to FTP accounts. Okay. So you can only get 10 FTP accesses. So as you see here, 8 out of those 10 have already been used in this account. So if we're going to give Risikat FTP access, we'll need to create a user for her, and we'll put an email address, we'll put a password, and then we'll specify if we want to give a full access or read-only access. And then so that's the first step. We'll create a user for her. And then the second step is I'll explain this, or I'll demonstrate this tomorrow in tomorrow's session for Automation Studio. But the second step requires you to have a third-party tool to access an FTP site. The FTP site, see, this is the URL for the FTP site, yeah? But you cannot access it on a browser. You have to use a middleware. And the one I use, so for example, if I put that in the browser, it's going to lead to nowhere, right? But to access the FTP site using this URL, I need a tool. And the one that I use is called FileZilla. So this is the tool that I use. It's a free tool. I'll demonstrate it to you guys tomorrow, but the gist of it is to access the FTP. This is, once this image loads. Okay, this is it right here. Not the right size, but this is, see how you see this image here? This is what the view is going to look like using FileZilla to access the FTP. All right, long answer to your question, but step one is you have to create access for the user, and then they need to log in using an FTP tool such as FileZilla to be able to access the folders in your FTP. All right?
Okay, thank you.
And I'll demonstrate it tomorrow. Okay, so keep the questions coming. So that's how you configure the file drop setup for it to be listening for something specific or in a specific folder. And once you've got that set up, it'll be green rather than what we see now that's gray. All right, so same thing with these activities here. Once you've configured them, they won't be gray, because right now we just have the shell of the activity. We don't have an actual activity. That's why it says configure, that's why it says choose, that's why it says choose. Once you've configured each of these components, you won't see the choose or configure option. You just see the actual activity. So for example, here, this is the send email activity, but what email exactly are we asking it to send? We have to go select that email. So if we go choose, it brings us to emails inside of Content Builder. So emails that we've built in Content Builder are available for us to select. Okay, so we can create a new email send activity and select our email message. So let's go see, for example, this is my folder here in Email Studio. I can select any of those messages that we've created over the last 2 weeks. So for example, I can select this one and I go next, and I'm happy with everything inside of the email. I go next. What does it want? Oh, I need to give it a name. Okay, let's call it the sample send activity. Talk about a long name. Now we'll go next, and this is where you select the data extension you want the message sent to. So I'm going to go through all this stuff tomorrow, but just for illustration purposes, just so I can show you what the end result looks like, let's just find the data extension. So select that, say yes, and then I go next, and then I go next. And so it's a guided process, just like when we are sending out an email manually. I go finish, and now you see what happened here. It's no longer in gray. Now it's in a brighter color because we've configured this activity. So same thing will happen here once we configure this. Same thing will happen here once we configure this. So let's actually just do a quick configuration. Let's say that's the folder we want. See now, it's no longer gray, but we still cannot activate it. And that's because we've not configured this bit. So if I take this out and I save it, now it will allow me turn my automation on. So if I say active, now my automation is active. And it will run if a file gets added into this file location, and then it will send an email to those folks. If this file gets imported into the data extension that I've pointed this email to, all right? But I don't want to have an email sent to random people, so I'm going to just deactivate it for now. Okay, let's keep it moving. The third starting source is your trigger starting source. So the question that might be running through your mind is probably, how do we know what starting source to use? Well, the answer to this question is going to be on the exam. for your Salesforce Marketing Cloud Administrator certification? And the answer is, if you know the exact time the file is going to arrive, or you know the exact time where your automation needs to run, then you want to use a schedule, because here you can select the exact start time, the exact start date. You can control your start and end date and start time. That's when you use the schedule. But if you don't know when the file is going to be available, or there's no need for precision in terms of when the automation runs, it could run at midnight, or it could run at midday, or at 7 p.m. It really depends on when your file becomes available. That's when you use the file drop. So that's the answer to that question. So when do you use the third one, the trigger starting source? So this one, this requires some configuration, and a use case for something like this will be, let's say one of you guys had an online store on Shopify. Yeah. You ran your store, you sold some stuff. Let's say you sold trinkets and such. You ran your store on Shopify. And then you had a Marketing Cloud account. You connect your Marketing Cloud account to Shopify, to your store on Shopify. And the reason you do that is because you want, every time somebody makes a purchase on your online store, you want to send them a confirmation message. You want it triggered automatically. Or every time somebody does something on your online store, you want a message sent out of Marketing Cloud. That's when you use this trigger option. All right. So the trigger option is for when you want sort of a if-then action. So if this happens in this other system, I want Marketing Cloud to do Y. If X happened in that system, I want Marketing Cloud to run an automation or to do X, Y, Z. That's when you use a trigger. So configuring this is going to be a longer process. So we won't go through this one. But as I mentioned earlier, a large majority of the starting sources that you're going to use, or that you see some companies use, will be these two. They also use the trigger one if they're a more sophisticated client. All right, so it could be a company that, let's say an airline. Yes, you purchase tickets to Bali. As soon as you click on purchase, data can be sent from that airline's website into Marketing Cloud, and that triggers an automation. This is where they'll use the trigger starting source, because this is instantaneous. There's no waiting for any file to arrive. There's no waiting until 6:30 a.m. for the automation to run. So the trigger one is the most instant starting source. All right, Julio. So let's see. Let's talk more about the activities. Okay, so let's walk you through these activities. So folks, a quick caveat. Most of you use smartphones, yes? You're either using a Samsung, iPhone, or something. And on your smartphones, there are apps that you seldom touch, right? Like most people, you use the calling app, you use the texting app, you probably downloaded WhatsApp and a few other apps. You probably use Instagram. There are a bunch of apps that you use, and there are a set of apps that you do not use. Same thing with Marketing Cloud. There are a bunch of features that hardly get used, and some of them sit in here. So when we get to some of those features, I'll tell you what those features do, but we won't dwell on them because they're there, but most organizations don't use them. All right, activity number 1, the data extract. So this here is an activity that can allow you to, as the name implies, extract, grab data out of Marketing Cloud. So as the icon, as the icon signifies, it allows you to grab data. So let's say it allows you to grab data out of a data extension and into some other location. So let's say, for example, I have these 35,000 records in here. Yes. If I wanted to grab that data automatically without having to manually export it, as you guys have come to learn, I can manually export this as a spreadsheet and it'll download to my browser as a spreadsheet. But if I wanted to automate that process, I can use the data extract activity. So I'll just configure the automation to say, grab this data extension and then export it to the FTP. And then if we stick with RBC, let's say it was RBC, I was grabbing data out of a data extension, exporting it to their FTP. This can be done automatically on an ongoing basis. So an example that I'll give you is, I've had some clients that did not have all of their systems integrated. Old school client, they do a lot of reporting on their email performance, and they use a third-party tool. I think they use something like Power BI or some other data visualization tool. So what they want is, they want data from inside of Marketing Cloud extracted on a daily basis. So every email that gets sent, they want the results captured and then extracted so that they can take that data and plug it into their Power BI or data visualization tool outside of Marketing Cloud. So the way to help them accomplish that is creating an automation. So we have a starting source of a schedule. So we say every evening at 11 p.m., run this automation. We want it to run daily. Yes, run this automation every evening at 11 p.m. Grab data from a specific data extension and then export it to, so we use the file transfer to push the file from inside of Marketing Cloud to the FTP. This is the kind of automation that you can create to meet that need. All right, because it's, yes, you can export that data manually like this, but not very efficient, right? So rather than having to do that manually, you can automate that sort of task. So that's what the data extract or data extract activity allows you to do. So let's double check. Okay. Now, the next activity, the data factory utility. So you know how I mentioned there's some apps on your phone you do not use? This is an example of an app or an activity inside of Marketing Cloud that is seldom used. It's something to do with data extraction, but have I configured this for a client before? Have I had a need to use this? No. For every extraction that needs to be done, this one right here does the job. So we hardly use this. Okay? So we're going to move on from that. The file transfer, on the other hand, this one's useful. This one allows you to do two things. It allows you to move files from one location to another. And they also, so you'll see the icon has an arrow pointing both ways. So it can allow you to extract a file from the Marketing Cloud system to the FTP, and it can also allow you to import a file from the FTP into Marketing Cloud. And it also allows you to, most importantly, encrypt or decrypt a file. So depending on the clients you work with or the company you work for, sometimes they're very security conscious. And when you're creating ETL, so extract, transform, load processes such as this one, where you're extracting data and pushing it into some location in the cloud, or you're importing data from one system to another using automated processes such as this, some organizations want to be confident about that process and about the security of the data that's being moved back and forth. So to meet that need for confidence that their data is not going to get intercepted or stolen, there is encryption and decryption inside of Marketing Cloud. So if we go back to that RBC example, let's say RBC wants to import, so RBC wants to grab a file from the FTP on a nightly basis, and then they want that file imported into Marketing Cloud. But that file is encrypted, right? The file is encrypted, so we need to decrypt it. So for folks who are not familiar, encryption is just, you're shielding the file. You think of it like a password lock. So you've password locked the file so that anybody without the password cannot open it. So when RBC provides us an encrypted file, a password locked file, we can use this activity, the file transfer activity, we can use it to decrypt. So we can use it to unlock the file that RBC is providing us that was encrypted. So the automation we'll create will be a file drop, a file transfer to decrypt the file or unencrypt the file, and then we'll use the import to push our unencrypted file into a data extension. So that's what the flow or the process would look like inside of Marketing Cloud. And by the way, speaking of flows in the CRM, they are automations, all right? They just have a slightly different user interface than this one. And it's debatable which one's easier to use, Flows or Automation Studio. I think Automation Studio is much easier to use than Flows. But hey, if you know how to build Flows and you also know how to build automations, you've got superpower, all right? So these are the activities you'd use to build, say, an import of a file that's encrypted, all right? So that covers that. Let's keep it moving on these activities. So next one is our filter activity. So I'm going to jog your memory here. You know how we built data extensions? Right? We built these data extensions, and then we were able to create filtered data extensions, right? No, let's go to the starting source. So we built this data extension, we imported 50,000 records into it. Yes, so these are wines from different regions in the world. Yeah, but I wanted to see a data extension that contains only wines from Italy. I don't want to see the Portugal or the ones from the US or Canada. I wanted a filter data extension showing me only wines from Italy. So let's quickly do this again, just so I refresh your memory. So I've got this 50,000 records. That's my whole population, but I only want to see wines from this country. So to do this, I'm going to need to create a filter, all right? But I have to create this manually. So I'll say country is equals to this, and then I'll save it to, I'll leave it here in this share data extensions folder. Wine from Italy. Yes, so I'm creating a filter data extension from my whole population set, which has 50,000 records, but I only want to see records that meet this criteria, which is country equals to Italy. So I'm creating a filtered data extension, but I'm doing it manually. All right, I'm doing it manually. So this is my data extension. In a few minutes, this number is going to change from 0 to whatever the number needs to be. But this is me creating a filter data extension manually. Why do I bring this up? Well, you can automate that process that we just went through. You can automate that whole process. So you can do that using the filter activity. All right. So instead of me having to, each time I wanted to see wines from Italy, instead of me having to come to my population and then creating a filter data extension, selecting country equals to Italy, I can get the system to do that for me. That's a better use of my time. I'm a busy man, I got stuff to do. I can't be creating filter data extensions manually. It's 2023. I should get the system to do some of my work. And this is how you do it. All right, but let's see, what's our number? 7,700. So that's how many people meet my criteria. Country equals to Italy. So how do we do this in an automation? Well, first of all, you have to save your filter criteria. So the way to do this automatically, there are a few steps to get it done, but let me show you how. So let's go start here. So we'll go to the data filters folder. So if I wanted to build an automation to filter from this population data extension of 50,000 and create me a data extension with everyone from Italy, the way to do it is, first of all, we go to the data filters folder. Yes? And then, as you've come to learn, we'll create our own folder, just so we know where to find our stuff. We'll call it the 2023. And now let's create a filter based on a data extension. So we have to select our starting source. So we want to create a filter based on the data extension. We have to select our starting source. And our starting source is that data extension that contains 50,000 records. So let's go. I think I saved it here. So see, that's my starting source. So I'll say, okay, now what is the criteria? What do I want the system to look for? I want it to search for everyone where the country equals to Italy. So this is the prerequisite we need to put in place before we can use this activity. So that's why I'm starting here in Email Studio. Once we've created this filter activity in Email Studio, we will be able to select it and add it into this automation. All right, so follow along, folks. So that's my criteria, and I say save. I'm going to give my filter a name. I'll call it the October. Let's just say wines from Italy. Filter. Let's just keep it that way. Wines from Italy filter, and I'll use that name. And I'll save my filter in my 2023 folder. Save. So now my filter has been saved. Okay, so if I come to 2023, see, that's my filter activity. So now I can use this inside of my automation. So to use this, I need to come to Automation Studio. And then I'm going to, and folks, I'm going to take you to a window that we've not previously seen, but for good reason. So I'll come to the Activities tab, and I'll go to the Filter section. Okay, and let's go ahead and create my activity. The activity I want is a filter. And I'll use the same name, Wines from Italy. And see here, it shows me the data filters folder, which is this folder in Email Studio. So this is part of why I say, make sure you're saving things inside your own folder so you can easily find it. So we'll come back here. Now, the filter that I created, which is this one, Wines from Italy, I need to select it from here. So let's go find my 2023 folder. This is it right here, and that's my Wines from Italy filter. So see the date it was created, that's today, a minute ago, created by me, right? Folder location, yeah, that's fine. So we'll keep it moving, we'll go next. And now in this window, we want to give it a name. So let's say the name we want, because this is going to be the data extension that gets created once the automation is run. So let's just say this is a filtered data extension. If you want, you could put a description. Let's say the sample automation. All right, it's always good to put a description just for historical purposes. So if anyone in the future is looking at stuff, they know what it was created for. Sample automation. Okay, so that's fine. So we go next. And this is a summary page. So we're going to use this filter, which we created in Email Studio. It's going to create a data extension for us. And the name of that data extension will be this, right? We like everything we've seen. We go finish. Okay, so that's step 2. Step 1 is create your filter in data filters. Step 2 is create your filter activity in Automation Studio. Step 3 is go grab the filter activity you've created. And you can use it here. So let's go choose it. So in this folder, let's find the filter activity we just created. And what did we call it? We called it, there it is, Wines from Italy filter. So when we say done, so see here, now we've selected our filter activity. So how about we actually run this automation? All right, that'll be exciting. So Robert, I'll come to your question, but let's quickly configure the schedule. We want this to run today, and we want it to run at 7:07. How about that? If I can get this done in 2 minutes. 7:07 p.m. And I want it to run hourly. And I want it to run after 2 runs. No, 3. And we go done. Save and active. Oh, let's see. Did I do it quickly enough? That was too close. Let's see. I may need to change that schedule because let's just refresh, see if I cut it too close. You know what? Let's change that time. Let's have it run at 7:08, just so 100% certain. This, yeah, 7:08. Okay, so now when the clock hits 7:08, the system is going to run this automation that I've created. It's going to run it based on this schedule, which is run it every hour starting today at 7:08. And it's going to do everything we've asked it to do in this filter. And here's the filter, and this is what we've asked it to do. Create a data extension based on this population or this main data extension, which has my population of 50,000. Find me everyone who meets this criteria, country equals to Italy. And then it's going to save the resultant data extension in this folder, the shared data extensions. All right, so see right now, there's 0 in my data extension, but the system is going to run that automation and generate the right result. Okay, so it's queued my automation. Let's wait for it. So while we wait, let's answer Robert's question. Raise your hand.
Hi. Yeah. So I noticed when you clicked on the file transfer inside the Automation Studio that there was on the top right, it said something about create your activity. Is that the same activity that you created outside that step before you clicked it? So is there more than one way to create the activity? No, like, so right in here. So when you created that filter, when you clicked on it to add a new one, yeah, I saw inside of there at the top right it said create. I can't remember exactly what it said, but I think it says something like create activity or something like that.
Let's go back to that screen. How about that? 2023. Let's say I was creating a new automation. Let's call this the Robert Wynter automation. And my filter activity. Okay, so I think this is where you're talking about when I clicked on choose.
Yes, top right it says create new filter activity. Is that the same filter activity you did outside of everything that you could do it in here?
We can do it from here.
Okay.
So yes, you're right. We could do it from here, or we could do it from this window, which is the activities tab. It's asking me to save this. So you can do it from in here. You can create your new filter activity from here, or you could create it from the activities tab. So as you've heard me say, there's usually more than one way to do some things in Marketing Cloud. Perhaps a more straightforward way, as I was showing it to you, was to just come here and do it. But
I wasn't sure if it was two different things or not. So
yeah, it's the same thing. Out of habit, I went here. I went to the activities section. You know what, let's save this. I'm not saving it. So I only did that out of habit. I usually come here, create my filter, but it's the same window you will have seen anyway. All right.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's check on the automation we created. So let's go to our 2023 folder. Oh, I think I know what's going on here. The time zone I selected is Central Daylight Time, whereas I am in Eastern Time and I'm expecting the automation to run. It's not going to run until it's 7:08 in Central Time. Central Time is Winnipeg time, which is 1 hour behind us. So it's 6:11 in Winnipeg now. This is not going to run for another 50-ish minutes. So what I need to do is go back into my automation and change the time zone. So this is a common mistake. You have to always select the time zone that you want. The one that I want is Eastern time, but this account seems to be on Central time. So that's why my automation did not run. So that's the time zone I want. And now I have to move my time to some time in the future because automations cannot run in the past, unfortunately. So I'll say 7:13 Eastern time and I'll save and then I'll activate. Okay, so now, once it's 7:13 Eastern time, as we've instructed the system, excuse me, what we expect to see is here in the activity tab, we expect to see a log, a timestamp. So see that? It's now doing what we've asked it to do. So it's running our automation, it's done running it. And now if we go back to Email Studio and we refresh this page, this data extension, which is currently showing 0, should show us this same number, right? So let's do that. Let's just step out of the folder and step back in. Come on. Okay, so you see that? So the difference between these two data extensions. So let's talk about the commonalities first. Commonality is they're both filtered data extensions. But the difference is this first one I created manually. Yes? And if I want to refresh it, I have to refresh it manually. Whereas the second one I created using the automation. And if I need it refreshed, I don't have to manually refresh it. The automation will refresh it for me by running. So it's going to run that filter and check every hour to see, is my number still updated? All right, so that's another example of an automation you can run. So a use case for something like this is if we, let's say, what example should I use? Let's say one of you, if we'll go back to the Shopify example, one of you ran a store on Shopify and you wanted emails sent to people every hour, people who meet specific requirements. So instead of having to manually refresh your data extension to find people who meet a specific requirement, you can have the automation do that. So the system will run the automation, find people who meet whatever requirement you want is, and then pull them into your filtered data extension. So that's a simple use case for an automation. Okay, I'm sure you guys can come up with better examples, or you've seen and experienced other forms of automations. So that's a quick use case. So let's go back to our canvas. So back here, we've only talked about the 4 activities. Let's keep it moving. The next one is the fire event. Similar to those apps on your phone you hardly use, you're hardly going to use this. But what it does is similar to a trigger. So it's a if-then sort of activity. If this happens, then if X happens, W should happen or Y should happen. That's when you use the fire event. The next one is the import file activity. So this one you're going to use more often. This, as the name implies, is the activity that allows you to grab a file from the FTP and import it. So grab, say, a CSV file and import that file into a data extension, right? So let's say we had a CSV file with 100,000 records, and then we used this activity in an automation. The system will grab those people and the CSV file, import them into this data extension, and then our number will become 150. So that's what the import file allows you to. But of course, as with all other activities, when you drag it into the canvas, you have to configure it. So what I mean, let me show it to you. So let's just create, and then, you know what, I'll just go pause the other one. One sec. So let's come back here. I'm going to pause this automation. There's no point. You've already seen it run. I can turn it back on later on. But let's say I wanted to use the file, the import file. As you see here, it's grayed out. We have to configure it first. So you have to create your import definition where you specify what file you want imported, where you want the file to be imported to. So you have to go through these guided steps here. So what is the file you want to import? What is the destination? The destination being a data extension. This is where you do the field mapping. So you say, okay, import the first name field into the first name field in my data extension. And then you review it and then you save. So you have to do the configuration for each activity. So once you've done that, it becomes available to be used in here. Okay. The next one, the import mobile contacts. This is very similar to the import file, but it's specifically for, or specifically available in accounts that have Mobile Studio configured. And as you've come to know, we do not have Mobile Studio configured in this account, but what it will do when it's used in an account that has Mobile Studio is it will allow you to import contacts, say, from the FTP into a Mobile Studio push or SMS list. All right? But I can't demonstrate that because we do not have it configured. Okay, Rusikat, let's unmute you. If I can find this Zoom thing. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, my question is, if we're importing for the import file activity, can we import from like an external location, let's say your computer hard drive or something? Or does it have to be in Marketing Cloud?
So let me rephrase your question. Can we import, now let me know if I get it wrong, but yeah, what I think you're asking is, can we import a file from the FTP to my desktop?
No, like the file is on my desktop and I want to import into Marketing Cloud and I want an automation on that file. Yeah. Is that possible?
How are we going to access your desktop?
Okay, I thought that's what you were describing. That's why I'm asking that question. That how do we access that file?
Yeah. So we can't access your desktop. What we can access is an FTP location. So if you move that file from your desktop to a folder in the FTP, which it'll make sense tomorrow once I demonstrate using this app for you. Okay. But if we go back to your example, if you move that file from your desktop into a folder in the FTP, then yes, we can access it and import it from the FTP location into Marketing Cloud.
Okay, and if there's an update on that file, the filter also gets updated?
If there's an update on that file,
yeah, let's say the file is in FTP now, and we've automated something. Does the automation, does it update if let's say we create a filter? Yeah, does the filter get updated?
Well, if we let's say let's go step by step. You have the file in the FTP, and this is where we want to import it to. Yes, this data extension, right? If there's a change in the file in the FTP, no, it's not going to reflect. But if a new file is dropped on the FTP, the system will pull that new file in.
Okay.
So a new file has to be provided.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Robert, were you going to follow up to one of those questions, or?
My question is kind of similar to hers in that
Okay.
when you do the FTP pulling into Marketing Cloud, is there an option somewhere that can push those records and add them into Sales Cloud afterwards, or is that asking too much?
So let's go step by step. You put a file in the FTP, you want to import it into Marketing Cloud, into a data extension, and then you want some of those records pushed into Sales Cloud.
Yes.
Is that doable?
That's what I'm
There's
hoping.
usually a way around it. So that option, it's not a conventional use case, but I can show you a sort of workaround. So let me step back. It's doable, but we won't be able to accomplish everything inside of Automation Studio. So we can, let's say there were 3 steps to it. We can get your file, we can import it into a data extension. But the part about pushing the data into Sales Cloud, we won't be able to do that in Automation Studio. But there's another application where we can do it. So we'll have to use a combination of these applications to achieve your end result.
Okay.
All right.
All right, thank you.
And the other application is Journey Builder. I'll talk about it. It's not as I mentioned, it's not a conventional approach, but it is doable.
All right. Well, you can show me when we get to Journey Builder, because I don't want to confuse anyone else.
Certainly.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions on this import use case? Anyways, you guys are not shy. Keep your questions coming. So we'll move on to the next activity. There's the refresh group. It's one of those apps. You're going to seldom use it, so don't bother with it. But what it does is it's like refreshing a filter data extension. That's the gist of it. Same thing with this one called the refresh mobile filtered list. As the name implies, it's refreshing a list of people who you want to message in Mobile Studio, either using a push or a text message as your message or as your medium for messaging them. So that's what that is. The next one is your report definition. This one, you're seldom going to use. I haven't used it myself, but it's there in Marketing Cloud. Don't bother with it. SQL, this one you are going to use very often. This one's important to know. All right. So SQL is an acronym for standard, I think it's standard query language, but it's a scripting language that allows you to do all sorts of things, such as pull records, run calculations, it depends on how far your imagination can go. That's what will determine the kind of things you can do with SQL, but it's quite useful. And it's a scripting language that's common across different platforms, not just Marketing Cloud. So, but in this application, inside of Automation Studio, what you can do with SQL is run a query. So you know how I've said there's usually more than one way to do things in Marketing Cloud. So you see how we created a filter data extension to find everyone whose country equals to Italy. We can do that using a filter. We can also do that using a query. So if we were going to write a query, here's how we'll do it. So let's say we wanted to create a query. We'll go create new query. Let's call it a sample query. Save our query in 2023 folder. Okay, I'll have to come back and create one, but let's just save it in the main query folder. So if I wanted to write a query to get this outcome, which is find me everybody from here whose country equals to Italy, instead of using a filter, I can write a query. So this is what my query would look like. Select, I'll need to put the field names. So select, so here's a quick trick I can show you guys. Instead of having to type the field names out, if you know where your data extension, your source data extension is saved, you can go there. So for example, I know this is my source data extension. This is where I want to find everyone whose country equals to Italy. So if I want to, instead of me typing all these fields like this, say, I want field equals number, and then I want field equals country, and doing this one by one, I can just go through here, just go to where the folder is, and I know it's saved in the shared data extensions folder. So this is my data extension. When I double click on that data extension, it pulls in all those field names for me. I don't have to type them one by one. So that's a quick trick. But anyways, back to what we're trying to accomplish here. I say select, that's a SQL prompt, select all these fields from this data extension. So I need to put the name of my data extension, which is my source data extension. I put it here. But something you have to keep in mind, SQL inside of Marketing Cloud just has some slight differences compared to, let's say, MS SQL or some other SQL. For example, you are not allowed to have data locations with spaces in their name. So to get around that, you have to put this brackets in front and behind the name of your data extension, or else you're going to get an error message. So for example, if I take out those brackets, the square brackets, and I say validate, it's going to give me this error message, meaning it cannot find any data extension with that name. But if I put those brackets back in there, square brackets, and I validate again, what's this about? Line 1, column 1. Okay, let's see. If I get that fill out there, let's see, what does it say? User where? Oh, it's asking me to specify. Okay, so let's finish our query and we'll come back to validate. So it's asking me to verify what exactly I want, because I'm saying, find me all these fields in this location, where I need to specify my condition, and that's where this comes in. So the where is where country, in this field, equals Italy. So see, now it's happy. It validates my query because I've put in all the things that I need to put in. So this query will get me the same result as my filtered data extension. So what we expect to see when I run this query, or the result we expect to see, is this number right here, 7718. All right. So the other thing about queries that I did not mention yet is that you have to, when you're creating a query, especially in Automation Studio, you need to point that query at a data extension. So see how we have these guided steps at the top? You define your query properties, you write your query, which is what we've done here. But we need to point the query to a data extension because that's where it's going to push the results of our query into. All right? So we need to define our data extension. So where do we want it to save the results to? So I'm going to create a data extension in here, and I'll use this as my template for the data extension I need to create. So let's say I want a standard data extension. I want to create it from existing, because I want all the same fields. So I want all the fields in here, right? So I'm going to change the name. Italian wine. Yeah, Italian. Oh, country equals Italy. How about it? It's cute. Country equals Italy. Go next. See, I get all those fields automatically. I don't have to create them one by one. So, you know what? Let's use a similar name, but I won't call it filtered. I'll call it the SQL DE, just so you guys recognize it. Okay, so this is the data extension that was created by the automation. Now, this is the data extension that's going to get populated with the results of my query. So now I can move on to this next step, which is my target data extension. So I'm going to select this one, the one that says SQLDE. All right. Okay, so let's go next. And now this is where I select my data extension. So since I've saved it in a folder that I know is this one, scroll there, and that's the one, SQLDE. And I can choose what data action I want. If I go with append, it will add new data to my data extension. If I go with update, it will update matching data if found. If a record is not found, it will add new ones. If I go with replace, it will overwrite everything and just put the new data. So it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. But just for illustration purposes, I'll go with overwrite. All right, and this is the summary page. That's our query properties. That's the data extension we want it to go to. That's the data action we want. And this is what our query looks like. And we go finish. Okay, so see, we created our query right here. So if we go schedule this to run, so let's schedule this for 7:37. if we can do it quick enough. If not, we'll do it for 7:38. And by the way, this error pops up because by default, it's always 12 a.m. But you have to change the time. And that's because you can't schedule an automation for a time that has passed. So go 7, we'll do 7:38. Okay, Central, no. Eastern, yes, where's Eastern? You know what would be nice if you can just select a time zone and save it as default, but it's not available. Not available yet. So if any of you works for Salesforce, the company, please bring that up with your software developers so they can fix this. Okay, so I've selected looks like this is frozen. It's not letting me save. Good point, do not lose this. All right, so folks, this might happen once in a while. The system will freeze on you and save. See if that works. Come on. All right, I may have to just refresh the window. That's why you need to be saving your work as you go, because if it freezes, you just end up losing your work. So see, it froze and it didn't save. So let's go select my query. Good thing is I think my query was saved. It's in this folder. What did I call it? Okay, I think it's saved. There it is. Yeah, that's my query right there. Okay, so we'll save so we don't lose our work again. And then we'll go select 7:40. Yes. It's the right time zone. Save. And we'll turn it on. Okay, so what we expect to see once the clock hits 7:40 is we'll see another run log here, right? So this is the first time it ran. See, it's also giving you statistics on the health of your automation. But our next run, we should see another log with the start time and the end time. So let's give it a minute. And the end result of this automation that's going to run this query is the query will run and find everyone who meets the criteria, which is from here, everyone whose country equals to Italy. It'll find all those people and push them into this data extension. And this number will change from 0 to this. That's what we expect to see. Okay. All right, so automation is running. It's right on time. So the query is running. It's looking into this data extension to find everybody whose country equals to Italy, and it's going to push them in here. So when I say there's more than one way to do things in Marketing Cloud, this is what I mean. You can do a filter data extension from here, which is what we did here. We did it manually. You can do a automated filter, which is what we did here, using the automation to run the filter. Or you can use a query to populate the same data into a regular data extension, a standard data extension, using an automation. And that's what we're doing right now. So once it's done, it will tell you it's complete. But if there's an error, it'll also tell you that. That'll be in red. Okay. So another question you guys might have thought of, but haven't asked is, what happens in an account where you have lots of automations that are running at the same time? So let's say I had 10 automations and I had scheduled them for 7:40. What will happen in that instance? Well, what will happen is the system will queue them and they will run one after the other. All right? If they're all scheduled for the same time, they will end up in a queue. So what you want to do, the best practice is if you know you're going to have lots of automations, you want to schedule them at different times. But if you have to schedule them at the same time, it's fine. They will all run one after the other at the appointed time. So our automation has run. It ran at 7:40 Eastern, which is 5:40 for this account's time zone. It ran successfully. And now let's go check. Did we get the results we were expecting? So what we expect to see here is 7718. So if we go into the data extension, look at that. We got the same result. All the people from Italy got pulled from our starting point into this data extension by the SQL query, which we ran from an automation. Okay? If you wanted to change the content of your query, can you do that? Yes. Let's show you how. If you wanted to change the content of your query and say, I don't want everybody from Italy, I want everybody from Portugal. I change it, I validate it, I save it, I go next, finish, save, and I can reschedule my automation to run for a future time. So I have to, now if I don't reschedule it and I just turn it back on as active, it will run every hour. So the next time it runs will be 8:40 and it will overwrite all the Italians in here. It will replace them with Portuguese wines, all right? But because I want to run it now in the next few minutes, I'm just going to change that to 45, yes. Okay, save and active. All right. So at 7:45, the system will run my automation again with the new requirement that I put in there, which is everybody from Portugal. And what we expect to see is all these Italian wines get overwritten. So they'll be cleared out and then they'll be replaced with Portuguese wines. All right. Once the system runs the automation. And of course, the number will most likely be different. Okay, so let's go take a look. So it's queued my automation, but we don't see it running yet. Sometimes you have to step out, step back in, go into, oh, what time did I select? Yeah, 7:45. Sometimes it's in a queue, so you may not see it. So Marketing Cloud teaches you patience. So while you wait, you can do some yoga, you can do some deep breathing, and it will eventually show up. So see, that's our process that's running. And it should be using the new requirement that we put in there, which is find everybody where the country was Portugal. So the other thing to point out is what we selected. So if we go back to our query, so folks, this is our query here, sample query. We changed this from Italy to Portugal. And then the data action we selected was overwrite, which means delete everything currently there and replace it with everything you just found. if we change the data action to update, what will happen is it will not delete everything it finds in the data extension. It will just add onto what's already there. So what it will do, if we change it to update instead of overwrite, is it will keep all the Italians, 7718, and then it will add all the Portuguese wines onto the Italians. And our number will be, I don't know, 7718 plus whatever the number of Portuguese it finds. All right, so let's see. See, the number has changed. And now what we see are the Portuguese wines. All right, so it deleted all the Italian wines and replaced them with the Portuguese, which is what we asked it to do. We said overwrite, and it did overwrite. Okay, so when you're building your query, you have to keep in mind what you want to achieve with the data action. Is it an update or is it an overwrite? You have to keep that in mind. But that's how the query activity works. Okay, so that's that activity. Excuse me. So, okay, let's talk about the next one. I'm going to add this one. So, do you notice what just happened? If you have an active automation and you're trying to add a new activity onto the canvas, you have to pause it first. So that's what's happening here. For me to add a new activity, any new activity, I have to pause it first because it's still active and running. Well, it's just active, it's not running at the moment. It's going to run every hour. Okay, so let's talk about the script activity. This is an activity that allows you to use JavaScript. So this is more geared towards developers and doing some things that might require an email or a cloud page update or that sort of thing. So if you know JavaScript, JavaScript is typically used in conjunction with HTML, CSS, that sort of thing. So you might come across, if you're on the consultant side, you might come across some accounts where they've built some automations and they're using this JavaScript activity to say update something on a cloud page or in an email, or depending on how very deeply technical these folks are, they might be doing some complex things such as grabbing data from somewhere and pushing it into some external resource or system. It can get complex, but all you need to know is if you need to write JavaScript to solve a problem inside of an automation, there's the activity to do that. And then, of course, there's the send email activity, which is fairly straightforward. You can choose an existing email. By doing this, you configure your message, you go through these guided steps, and the email message will be sent as part of your automation. So for example, if we go with this situation I've created here, where I say, find me everybody whose country equals to Portugal. The system has found 2,229 records. Let's say these were records with email addresses, right? Right now, they're not. But let's say these were actual people with email addresses. What I can do with my automation is, once this step runs, so step one is find me everybody who meets the specific criteria, Portugal, equals country or country equals Portugal. My next step can be send these people an email. And this is where I'll configure the email message I want to send, the data extension where the people I want it sent to currently sit. And then in that case, I'll be selecting this data extension, if that's who I want it sent to, right? But that's what the send email activity allows you to do. Send group connect. This is Mobile Studio related, but there's an activity that allows you to send group messages. And then this next two also do the same thing. This allows you to send push messages. So a push message exists inside of Mobile Studio. And this is when you send a message on an app. So if you go back to, say, RBC, let's say RBC has the online banking app, and they want to send a push message to all RBC mobile banking app users about some new credit card that they're eligible for. This is how they can do it. So they can have it automated, or they can send a one-time message, but they can configure their message here, put it into an automation, and every time the automation runs, it will go through step one, and step two will be send a push message to the identified folks. Same thing as send an SMS. So you can send an SMS with Mobile Studio. All right. And then, folks, each of these activities, you can put them, you can stack them up. They don't always have to be step one and step two. So let's say, for example, I want to run a query, or I want to import a file. I import my file, and then I want to run a query. And then I want an email message sent. And then I want a text message sent. And then I want a push message sent. So in this order, the automation is going to do all the activities in step one first before it goes to step two. All right, so it will do the import file, and then it will run the query. Once it's done with all these steps in step one, then it will move on to step two. Run all these activities. So let's say you had more activities in here. It will run all of them in step two before it gets to step three. And then if there's an issue, so let's say there was an error in this query in step 2.3, the automation will stop at that activity that errored out. It will not run the next step, which is 2.4, neither will it run 3.1. So if there's an error in any of these activities, it will stop there. If the error starts in activity 1.1, that's where it's going to stop. So that error will need to be fixed before it can move on to the next activity. All right, so it's very sequential. Let's see, I've been talking for a bit. Okay, can we do a save as to use an existing automation specifying different criteria? You can, yes. See, oh, you know what? I'll rephrase your question. Let me know if I get it wrong. Can you reuse an existing automation so you don't have to create a new one from scratch if the existing one has some of the things that you're looking to use? If that's your question, if I got what you're trying to understand right, the answer is yes. So for example, if I come to my 2023 folder, this is my existing automation. So can I take this and create a new automation? Yes, I can. So how will I do that? Actually, rather than going save as, I'll just go copy. So you see this icon here in the top right? I'll say copy this automation, and let's call it the V2. Save in the same folder and copy. And now if I go back to that folder, which is the 2023, see? What the system does is copy all the activities from my original, copies it into V2, and then I can make any changes I want in V2. Make sense? Was that your question? Okay, good. All right, so yes, you can make copies of, just like you can make copies of emails, data extensions, you can make copies of automations. All right, we're at time. Any final questions? Yes, okay, Robert, how does this thing not pop up sometimes? Okay, go ahead. You can.
Tomorrow, are you able to show us how to troubleshoot if one of the automations does not work?
Yeah, I'll touch on that tomorrow, and I'll demonstrate the file drop. So tomorrow we'll start with how to access the FTP. I'll show you how to use FileZilla to access the FTP, and then I'll demonstrate a file drop automation, and then time permitting, I'll demonstrate how to troubleshoot an automation. All right. Okay, folks, in the absence of any other questions, we will disperse for tonight. Thank you for your curiosity. We'll connect tomorrow.